Blackbeard works here. So there's a very interesting thing that has happened recently in the anime. When Vegapunk is explaining all the Devil Fruits, we, for the first time in I think 20 years or something like that, get a good shot of the Bara no Mi, otherwise known as the Chop Chop fruit. But in getting that good shot of the Chop Chop fruit, a very foggy memory came into the clear about what the Chop Chop fruit reminded me of. It looks like a red version of the Yami no Mi, otherwise known as the darkness fruit. Because you see, throughout all the Devil Fruits that we've seen in One Piece, they all have a curly stem or some sort of design within the stem that correlates with the Devil Fruit in some way. However, there are 3 cases, actually 2, but I'll say 3, that this doesn't occur, as far as I know, as far as official fruits go. So we have the Yami, the Bara, so Blackbeard and Buggy's fruits, and then the snake fruit model Yamato no Orochi. The reason why this fruit's kind of like an in-between, kind of like a weird yes but no situation, is because there are designs at the ends of the leaves that I think are supposed to reflect the nature of the fruit, seeing as how the Yamato no Orochi is an 8-headed like snake beast. So those like arrow heads at the ends of the leaves probably represent the heads of the snake itself. So I consider that a design. I'm sure you would too, looking at it. So that I kind of push off to the side and say, well, it's not typical, but it does kind of go into the fold with the rest of the Devil Fruits that we see throughout the series. The reason why these 2 are weird, the Chop Chop fruit and the darkness fruit, or the Bara no Mi and the Yami no Mi, is because they don't have any sort of design leaves, no design stems. They're both presumably pineapples or some sort of pineapple-like fruit. And the funny part is that the users of these fruits are weirdly parallel with one another because, one, Buggy wanted the fruit to sell it, but ended up eating it on accident. And then someone was involved with him eating it. That person, of course, being Shanks. But with Blackbeard, his whole purpose for Big Ol' Whitebeard's crew was because he was looking for this fruit. And in finding this fruit, he had to off somebody in order to get it. So in both situations, another person was involved with both characters eating the fruit. Buggy tried to hide the fruit from Shanks, ate the fruit on accident. Then Blackbeard intentionally offed a fellow crewmate in order to have the fruit for himself. Another interesting thing about it is that both of these characters ate said fruits while all the ship's more prominent characters at the time. Blackbeard, of course, was a part of Whitebeard's crew, and then Buggy was on Roger's crew with Shanks. Another interesting thing about the powers is that one thing you don't really see with a lot of Devil Fruits, when the power is treated as an absolute. What do I mean by that? The power usually has some sort of caveat when it's a paramecia, because paramecias usually have a lot of powers that have a bunch of rules, like say Sugar's fruit. Sugar, she touches you, you turn into a toy, right? However, if she doesn't give you a contract, the power isn't really fully in effect because you still have your own will, even as a toy. You don't have to follow any rules that she commands you to do or anyone else commands you to do if she doesn't give the target a contract. Because with Kyros, she didn't give him a contract shortly after turning him into a toy. Therefore, he could still act on his own free will, which basically became her downfall in a way. But from that point forward, when she did turn someone into a toy, she gave them a contract, and then upon giving a contract, the transformed person, now a toy, had to be obedient. So there's an extra layer that she had to go through. It's not just cut and dry as turning someone to a toy, which is why I say her power isn't absolute. There's still like a hole there. But with Buggy, if he gets cut, his body will simply separate. His power is absolute in that he's completely invincible against one method of damage, no matter what form that method of damage comes into. Blackbeard is the same way, and he's a real weird outlier because he's the only Logia that really, I guess, has the most abilities out of any Logia there is, come to think of it, which I guess makes sense because the nature of his ability itself is very kind of metaphorical, even though there is a actual direct explanation as to what darkness is. But still, the fact that he can touch any Delphoid user and turn off their abilities is something to make note of, because no other power can do that, and there's only one substance in the One Piece world, as we know, that does the same effect, and that is Sea Stone. Because not even the ocean turns off abilities. The ocean fatigues Delphoid users, doesn't turn off abilities. Nor does the ocean affect constructs, which is always a weird thing to think about. But yeah, Blackbeard will turn off Delphoid powers absolutely if he touches the user in question, which is interesting. It's been suggested in a few anime panels and in the manga that he also sort of lapses Delphoid effects if he comes in contact with them. That I'm not too sure of, because too, there was one bit against Luffy in Impel Down in which it seems as though he deactivated Gear Second once he touched Luffy. So that's another odd thing. But yeah, it feels as though both the Chop Chop fruit and the Darkness fruit have abilities that are absolute, and once that condition is met, there's nothing else that needs to be done. I touch you, your powers turn off. You cut me, I cannot be cut. Well, Buggy is super interesting too, because the height of what his abilities are, I think, really did happen in Marineford, because of course Luffy used Buggy as a shield against Mihawk. Mihawk could not cut Buggy. I don't care about hockey or whatever in this situation. The point about it is that Mihawk is the strongest swordsman in the world, the height as far as swordsmen are concerned, and he could not cut Buggy, which is very, very funny that the man who cannot be cut has the greatest swordsman, presumably, in his employ now when it comes to Cross Guild. Speaking about Cross Guild, what's very interesting about the Blackbeard Pirates and Cross Guild is that their Jolly Rogers are kind of the same in terms of, I guess, design principle, because with the Blackbeard Pirates, the Jolly Roger is made up of 3 skulls and 8 crossbones. The 3 skulls are interesting because they could represent a whole lot of things. There have been a ton of theories on YouTube about it. I've made one. The going theory I like to spit out is that the 3 skulls represent the 3 types of Delphoid fruits that Blackbeard is going to get over the course of the story, which means the only fruit he has left to get is a Zoan fruit. So with Cross Guild, it's very interesting because the Cross Guild Jolly Roger is actually made up of 3 Jolly Rogers, representing the 3, I guess, figureheads of Cross Guild at this point. So you have the Buggy in front, then you have the Jolly Roger Baroque Works, and then you have a very interesting and completely unique Jolly Roger for Mihawk, because as far as we know, Mihawk has never had a Jolly Roger of his own because he's never had a pirate crew. So yeah, in both situations, the Jolly Rogers represent 3. Buggy's Jolly Roger, the Jolly Roger of the Cross Guild, represents the 3 high-ranking members in Cross Guild, and the Blackbeard Pirate Jolly Roger represents something, presumably something to do with Blackbeard. Another interesting fact about Buggy and Blackbeard is that they left a very similar scar on their respective rivals. Well, in a way, because Buggy left a 3-mark scar on Luffy's hat, and of course, Blackbeard gave Shanks his iconic scar. The interesting part about both of these situations is that both of them are permanent and kind of done in a very similar way, because it is highly suspected that Blackbeard gave Shanks his scar with a claw weapon. What's funny about this is that in the way that Buggy holds his daggers, it's in between his fingers, therefore appearing as if Buggy also is using a claw-like weapon, even though he's not. So I just wanted to point that out because that's very peculiar But what's also very interesting about Blackbeard and Buggy is that, unlike Shanks and Luffy, Blackbeard and Buggy have a lot of design changes because, well, both of them sort of come from the bottom in a way. Buggy is in the East Blue as a low bounty pirate. Blackbeard came from the Whitebeard pirates with a bounty of actually 0, which is very unique. But what's very interesting is that both these characters were warlords and then both became Yonko. But through the ranks of their careers, they change outfits drastically. And they both have a piece of their appearance that sort of becomes more luxurious as they rise in rank. With Buggy, his hat becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, possibly due to a hidden insecurity about how Shanks was given the straw hat and not him. Though I think that has a bigger meaning than he realizes. And then with Blackbeard, his beard gets bigger and bigger and more luxurious as he rises in rank. Because at the start of the story, the start of his story, I should say, we see him in Jaya, he's just got 5 o'clock shadow. But by the time he becomes a Yonko, he's got a full-length beard. So both of them have aspects of their appearance that reflect their rank at the time. But you know what's really funny? And I almost forgot to mention this. Buggy and Teach, Blackbeard, both basically get their foot in the door on the world stage after Impel Down. Because it's after Impel Down that everyone finds out that Buggy has all these accolades, that he was Roger Pirate, etc., etc. And then Teach gets his main crew, who then become the 10 Titanic captains after Impel Down. And then, of course, this translates into Marineford, in which, again, both of them get a ton of accolades because the world now knows Buggy thanks to his expert live streaming capabilities. And then, of course, Blackbeard becomes the first person in history to get 2 Devil Fruits after the events of Marineford. So that's super interesting, actually. What's also very interesting, and I think is where the two sort of split, is that, and this is a bit of a theory, but Blackbeard was told by his mentor, in a way, Edward Newgate, Whitebeard, was that he wasn't the man that Roger is looking for. Therefore, he is not the king of the pirates. I think with Roger, seeing as how he did encourage Buggy back in the olden flashback, saying once the crew had reached Skype up and Buggy was taken away by the magnificence of the Golden Bell, was that, Buggy, when you become a captain or when you have your own crew, you can come back up here and steal it. He never says anything like this to Shanks. So what I think is that he entrusted Buggy to go off and be his own man, but he entrusted the straw hat, whatever the straw hat means, to Shanks, because he told Shanks, you are not him. You are simply a delivery system for the one who is him. So I think what Shanks was told by Roger is a very similar message, probably delivered in a kinder way to what Whitebeard told Marshall D. Teach Blackbeard in Marineford, which is a very interesting thought to have, because it seems as though Buggy was always in the shadow of Shanks, but the reality could be the opposite way around. Now, the last thing that's super interesting, and this goes into the fold of a video I made a while ago, but we know that Blackbeard is a Rox D. Zebek fanboy. His ship is named the Saber of Zebek. He has a very similar dream to Zebek. He presumably wants the world if Van Augur and Catherine Devon can be trusted. But I think with Buggy wanting to go after the One Piece and having the romance of adventure, I think what his story is that he's actually the true son of Rox D. Zebek, which means Rox D. Zebek was a clown. Ha! I love that thought. I love it so much. But what's also interesting about this is that Buggy is the son of Roger's enemy, and presumably Zebek left him to Roger to raise, because I think at the end of the battle, the two did have a lot of respect for one another. Similar thing happens when Roger leaves his son Ace to be taken care of by his enemy Garp. So then that's very funny that Ace then meets Buggy, and then later on, Buggy is then caught up in a rescue plot to save Ace. So the sons of rivals have met each other on multiple occasions, but don't really know the significance of their relationship. And I find that kind of beautiful, actually. It's very funny that Buggy met Ace with hospitality, but then Ace met Blackbeard with hostility, which ended up being Ace's downfall, as Ace was the meal ticket to sort of start off Blackbeard's whole entire plan of becoming a Yonko, and then possibly in the future something greater. But with that being said, give me your thoughts.